Welcome to Building a Bigger Booty, the series where I show you how to grow your glutes.
Let's talk about the exercises that we need to do to build the biggest glutes that we can possibly build. So, exercise selection is going to be super important. We can eat all the right foods, do all the right things outside of the gym. Obviously, that's more important, but if we're not doing the right things in the gym, again, that doesn't matter either. So let's get into it. I'm going to take you through the principles that I use when I program glute programming for myself as well as my clients. Ignore my delicious, juicy looking steak dinner there. We've gotten into nutrition a little bit last time, but we'll continue to cover that more in future videos. So, exercise selection. It's going to matter most what exercises you are choosing to do. End of the day, ultimately what matters most is how long you do them for, consistently over time, improving and getting better with these exercises. But at the very least, we got to choose the right ones to progress and get better at. So let's talk about it. Now, I've got a list here of different exercises, but more so different exercise patterns and techniques and movement patterns that we want to focus on first. I believe these are the 4 things you need to build the biggest and most massive glutes. So first up is a squat pattern. Now you can do this with a barbell, traditional barbell back squat. You can do it with a dumbbell. You can do it with this hack squat machine, Smith squat machine, regular squat machine, whatever your gym has. Doing a squat, something where you're like this, you end like this, and you come back up. Yes, it's going to train the quads, but it's also going to train the glutes because they are a powerful hip extensor. And if you've ever seen anybody who does weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, they got big glutes, they squat. Hockey players, they squat. Baseball players, they squat. I promise you, squats work. So choosing one of those, then choosing a hip hinge pattern. RDLs, we got into those. Cable pull-throughs, another great option, we'll get into those. Glute hyperextensions or Roman chairs, or on the Nordic machine, any kind of glute extension. Hip hinge, something where you're going from here, you're hinging at the hips because you're stretching and lengthening the glutes and then actively contracting the glutes as well and shortening them. Hip hinge pattern is important as well. Next up, unilateral work. We can't neglect with any body part, specifically legs, we can't neglect the unilateral. So doing something like a split squat, a lunge. Lunges, split squats are going to be king. You already know that I love split squats. And just because they're number 3 on the list doesn't mean they're not number 1 in my heart. They're still important. Split squats, always going to be beneficial for the glutes because you're lengthening that glute under load and actively contracting it, using it single leg. Just trust me, single leg works. So using a unilateral pattern, you can do this on a leg press as well because you're getting that stretch of the glute and the glute. Yes, the quads. When you do a leg movement, it's going to involve glutes and quads. You can't just isolate, except we're about to get into that. But choosing a single leg movement is always going to be key for building bigger legs. So do your lunges, do your split squats. I promise they suck, but they're worth it. Lastly, isolation. I do kind of rank this at the bottom slot because we want to make sure we're starting with our compounds and building strength and progressing with those week in, week out. And then we're getting to our isolation. So isolations could look like our hip abduction machine, our glute cable kickbacks, banded work, fire hydrants, donkey clamshells, all that good stuff. They have their time and they have their place because the glutes, we'll get into it more, but there are 3 muscles, glute max, glute med, glute min. And the glute med and glute min see a lot of work in any kind of single leg support, hence why we're doing single leg exercises. But a lot of times targeting them with an isolation machine like an abduction, cable, seated, whatever is going to be best. So as far as that being said, 2 times a week is an ideal frequency for these. Yes, you can do 3, but again, 80% of what we build is going to be spent in the time that we're spent actually recovering and not in the gym. So if we're going more than 3 times a week and pushing hard, because really you need to be pushing hard with these, you can go 3 times a week, half-ass it, give it half effort, but it's not the same. I'd rather go twice and really push it hard. I like to divide this into 2 ways, doing a more anterior chain focus for the legs and then posterior chain. Anterior might look like doing a barbell back squat, some split squats, some leg extensions, focusing on our quads. We still have to work those. We can't always work just the glutes. And then maybe throwing in a low hamstring isolation and some glute hip abduction isolation. Then posterior chain, we can do a hip hinge. We can do our RDLs. We can do our hip thrusts. We can do some glute hyperextensions, focus more on some single leg stuff like a single leg press or some lunges to burn out. And then you have your 2 different days of the week where you're training the glutes in totality. That is our exercise selection. Next up, we're going to get more into the actual exercise performance Because again, we need to know what to choose first and how to progress them. But we also need to make sure, even though we've chosen the right thing, we still need to do it properly. But on the overall hierarchy, you better choose the right thing and just do it a lot. You better eat and rest and recover and do it a lot. And those two are interchangeable. But then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of actually performing the exercises properly for the most maximum possible growth, as well as eating the perfect diet for maximum growth as well. All right, today, the hip thrust. Let's go over it, let's dissect it. Let's first look at what it should look like, and then we'll break it down into all its parts. All right, so now you have a proper hip thrust. It is not a back extension. It is not a lot of arching. It is simply squeezing through the hips, extending at the hips. Now, let's talk about setup. So I like to set it up at a rack here. I like to use one of these plyo jump boxes available. Bench also works just as well. I also throw some weight in the back. That way this doesn't push back when I'm loading this up and really pushing into it. A hack here to make this easier so it doesn't crush anything as you're loading it up. So throw some bumper plates or regular plates underneath there, and you're good to go. And now when you're starting this, you can't lift a lot of weight. Using bumper plates, again, 10-pound plates, something that's going to elevate it from the ground. So if you're using 5-pound plates, the bar is going to be way too low. It's going to make the setup really awkward. So grab bumper plates, grab a barbell pad, of course, and the actual setup here. We're going to roll this onto our lap, get the feet set, shoulder blades into the back pad here. And we're going to lift up. And if you see our knee position, we want a nice 90-degree here. So we don't want this. We also don't want this. Feet right about 90, toes slightly out. And from here, I'm thinking getting the weight slowly come down. I'm keeping my core tucked, so not arching my back. Tucking and engaging here, squeezing up, hold, and slowly lower. And as you lower, don't let that back arch. It's not a twerk, it's a thrust. So here, down, slow, pause, and squeeze. You want to imagine you're driving as much force as you can into that bar, squeezing the glutes as hard as you can at the top, pushing your feet into the floor. And just to practice that without any weight, elbows into the pad here, you're lifting from right here, squeezing up. So it's not this, it's not the bedroom, it's an exercise. So we're tucking, we're engaging. We're keeping this part of our body in a straight line as we come down, not allowing the hips to bevel at the bottom, tight. And I will say, the worst part of this exercise is the setup and the breakdown. It's still worth it, 100%, but there are some trade-offs, especially as you load up some heavier weight. It takes forever to set up, and that's a pain in the butt to sit down, especially after you're fatigued. Now, as far as the hip thrust goes, we also need to cover the use of a machine hip thrust, because if you have this, I highly encourage that you use it. It's going to save you so much time and energy of setup, breakdown, all the things that make the hip thrust kind of suck. It is a fantastic exercise, nothing better than doing the barbell, throwing around some heavy weight. But the setup, the energy cost of that isn't always worth it. So if you have a hip thrust machine, definitely use it. You want to make sure this pad nice and tight across the lap. I'm going to walk my feet out, knees at 90, just like we did with our hip thrust. From here, we just have to unrack the weight, put these back here. The thing with this one, I never know what to do with my hands.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Be good just to hold them down by your side. Yeah.
it's really easy to let your back just arch here, right? And we're just doing this, but this isn't doing anything. So we want to get into our nice top position here. When I think about tucking, so you can see this right here, tuck the tailbone under, squeeze, core tight, hips up 90, keep this brace as we come down. Squeeze, and down. We don't want to just be arching and swinging. You get that time in the bedroom later. No. Here, powerful, up, squeeze, and down slow. Really imagine that you're squeezing the glutes as hard as you can, coming down slow. Then to rack it, just make sure we're up high enough and set it back down. Now, the fantastic thing about this that we can't do with the barbell is we can do a single leg hip thrust. So I like to set up, get up here, and with one leg at a time. It's the same idea. This other leg is out straight. And then you will feel that burn on the one working leg, I promise you. All right, let's go over the RDL a bit more. So, ideally, with a barbell, we got it set up here. I got 45s on each side. If you have bumper plates, same thing as well. You want to use those. That way it's elevated. Bar should be starting at about mid-shin height. Worst case, you can always prop it up on a plate underneath each on the side to get that deficit so you're not pulling all the way from the floor. From here, remembering this is a hip hinge. This is our movement right here. This is all it is. Hinging at the hips, hips go down and back. Pause, core tight, back flat. Push the hips through. So we're gonna get nice and steady, squeezing our elbows into our sides. It's like we're trying to tuck something under our armpits. Coming down, we're gonna pull the slap out of the bar and up. Work tight here. Down, nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pull back up. Now remember, when we come to this pull here, it's not this. We're extending all at our low back. So from here, we're up, hips go back, grazing down the shins, and pull through. This bar is staying in contact with my legs almost the entire time, up and down. I'm fixating on a point in front of the ground, staying directly in front of me, in front of my shoes, and then up. And a good tempo to grow some muscle is we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, and up 2. So if you're doing 10 reps, it should take a good minute. We're not just, we're intentional. We're coming through, we're squeezing, we're stretching, we're pausing, we're exploding up. Now, we'll cover this in another video. But I also love to use the Smith machine because, again, it makes the setup a lot easier. The bar does all the moving for you. There's no balance and stability, which is fine. It's fine to train those balance and stabilizing muscles. It's better for you. It's more functional. But it definitely saves time and saves energy for your setup. Dumbbells, great as well. We'll cover that in another video. I like barbell best. It's easiest to load. And with the dumbbell, you're starting about this far off the floor. You know, with a plate, you're going to start up a little bit higher. So let's run through that one more time. We're here, we're in our power position, hinging at the hips, hands shoulder width apart, slack coming out of the bar. We're up, arms tight to the sides, hips go back first, bar scraping down the shins, we're pausing, and we're back up. We don't have to touch the floor with the bar. Remember, to get the most out of this, it's a glutes movement. It's a hip hinge, and the knees are going to bend. If you want more hamstring, more straight leg deadlift, it's going to look more like this. Feel that stretch. But at the end of the day, both muscles, powerful extensors of the hip. So as long as you're hinging at the hip, like so, Don't get too worried about which version you're doing and how optimal you're doing it, because you're going to grow the glutes, you're going to grow the hamstrings, either variation that you perform. And that is your RDL. Until then, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.